So I'm here with my friend Ian Weeks, and we just figured out we've been friends now for about 18 years. And recently, Ian Weeks ran for Congress. He ran for the 25th District in California, and I wanted to invite Ian on today to just talk about his journey. Gosh, Ian, how does one go from being a financial planner to running for Congress?
Yeah.
And, what it was like and what's in your future? What can we look forward to?
Gosh, well, there's a lot to unpack. I mean, I've basically spent the last 3 years of my life running for office. So we ran the state assembly race prior to running for U.S. Congress. And as I just mentioned before we started recording, I mean, I had a lot of experiences that I would not have had otherwise. So it was a really interesting time. I guess, in terms of like, how does one get into all of this? For me, it was not by design at all.
Right.
None of this was my idea.
Your degree was not in politics, as I recall.
No.
There's no government background.
Yeah, I think I took like a political science class one time, but no, I mean, this was not, as you mentioned, I'd been in financial planning for, maybe 15, 16 years at the time that I started running for office. And so, I had a wife, I had 2 little kids, we were building our life, we were just doing kind of what normal people do. And back in March of 2022, I get this phone call out of the blue, and it's basically from the California Republican Party asking me to run for the state assembly. And so, that's. Did
you ever figure out how that transpired? Like, how did they pick you?
I did, and I mean, there was no objective reason. Obviously as a Christian, like, I believe in God.
Yes.
I believe that everything is ordained by God, especially when you ask him, when you invite God to run the show, he does.
Right.
And so it really was providential in my view, but I should not have objectively received that phone call. But the way it worked was, there was a guy that I was casual friends with that had been involved in local politics in the city of Hemet. And it was essentially the Republican Party was scrambling to find someone to run for a seat that nobody wanted to run for because it was last minute and it was a very, very difficult seat.
And the other gentleman had run unopposed, right?
Let's see. Well, he would have.
He would have, okay.
The situation
initially
was, this guy that I ran against in the state assembly race would have run unopposed had they not found a candidate the day that they found me. That was the last possible day. And it was essentially, they knew somebody who knew somebody who knew me. And they were actually asking my friend to run, and he said, no, I'm not, I don't want to do that. But you know what? I know this guy named Ian Weeks. You should give him a call. And so they called me up. We had a brief conversation. We had to scramble and jump through a bunch of hoops because that was, I didn't know any of this stuff, but I learned that day was filing deadline day, and that means if you don't get filed that day, you're not running for office.
Right.
And so that was the way that all of this started. And I mean, I genuinely believed when I got that phone call, I was like, well, God, clearly you're tapping on the door of my heart, because there's no reason I should get this phone call. And one of the more profound things that happened that day was, my thought was very much that God was calling me to do this. But I, like any intelligent man would do, called my wife into the room and explained what was happening. And I said, what do you think? And I mean, she didn't skip a beat. She just kind of looked at me and said, I think God's calling you to do this. And that was really the beginning of the next almost 3 years of just, I mean, our lives completely changed.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I could tell you stories for hours about, what it's been like, but it is kind of neat that today is the day that I think Chad Bianco is going to announce that he's running for governor. And,
yay! Excellent.
I got to meet him. I got to ride horses with him.
Been praying for him. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was a highlight for me. But I would say that the most important thing that I would want to convey is that I believe to the core of my being that the fundamental problem in our country is the distance that we've traveled from God and from the traditional values of the Bible. And I basically got to spend the last 3 years really treating this running for office opportunity more as a ministry to point people back to God and to those traditional values that I think made our country great in the first place.
And I've got to interject here. You're very bold. I know you didn't have the budget that the opposition had.
There was a disparity.
There's a disparity, but you know what? You went out. You went door to door.
Yeah.
You pounded the pavement. You never backed off your beliefs, which I love. I love that about you. I think that's it's courageous in these days.
Yeah.
To be able to stand firm on what you believe, and when it'd be so easy to tell people what they want to hear to get their vote.
Absolutely. And I will say, I mean, one, I do believe that God made me that kind of an individual. I mean, God gave me this gift and this ability to say, I really don't care what's done to me, what's said about me. I'm going to do what I believe God is calling me to do, come hell or high water. But I will also say that there was something very freeing in running two races that were effectively viewed by the average person as totally unwinnable. Just, I mean, it wasn't, Maxine Waters in LA 80-20 unwinnable, but these were viewed as safe Democrat seats. And so in a way, you get to approach it going, I'm not supposed to win anyway, so who cares?
Right.
Say what you actually believe. And I do, to a certain extent, believe that had I played the game the way that it's traditionally played, I probably still wouldn't have won. I don't think that was the point. But even if I had, I do have this deep abiding conviction that if you have to capitulate and water down your beliefs and kind of pretend to be something that you're not in order to win, then even if you win the race, you didn't win.
Right.
And I've always joked with folks that when they would push back and say, you gotta do and say what you gotta do and say to win, and at the end of the day you gotta compromise, you gotta get things done. And my joke was always, well, do we have a shortage of go along to get along people in the government?
Right.
Or
right.
Is it the other way around?
It's the other way
right?
around.
We have a shortage of people that have the courage of their convictions and will actually stand for what they believe in.
Yes, we do.
Well, I don't think that I would really like to see guys like Donald Trump be even bolder about the issues of life and traditional marriage. By the way, I love him, and I think he's doing a great job. I do think that the culture is not maybe ready for how bold I was about what I was saying, but I still think it's really important that it's said, and we have great examples in people like Donald Trump, in people like Chad Bianco, who, again, while I'd like to see more boldness on the spiritual side, these guys are, nobody can deny how courageous they are.
Right.
And so we do have great contemporary examples of men who say, what, to hell with it, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to do what's right, no matter the cost. And certainly with Donald Trump, I mean, my God, what's happened to that guy?
Well, America had spoken, too.
Yeah.
America clearly has shown that that's what America wants.
Yeah.
America wants the, traditional values back.
Yeah.
And is tired of the woke community and what's taking place. And so it's huge. Yeah. It's not it doesn't go without noticing that the people with conviction, like yourself, who have to be courageous and stand up for what you believe in, and you've positioned yourself to be a target of, especially in California, of the left. But it's just such a nice thing. It's such a nice thing. I mean, Chad Bianco. Let's talk about him for a second, because Chad is. He's a cowboy, and I consider you a cowboy, right? Yeah. All along, my husband and I, and even our close friends have talked about you as being a very Reagan-esque quality. And that is to say that, conservative values, not afraid to talk about God and what your beliefs are, and, identifying as, in California, what a marriage is to be, anti-abortion, the whole thing, the right, the right for life. So I think that's, it's missing, but across the country, I think as more and more people see people like you standing up, I think it's easier. I think it's a little easier when you're in a little bit of a crowd, a little bit of a group, to be more courageous when you have people like yourself that are leading, and I love that. Again, I think It's powerful. I'm proud to be your friend.
Thank you.
I think that obviously we supported you.
You guys did a bunch. You guys were amazing.
We couldn't have. I mean, we picked a better person that represents us, and we love that. We are looking forward. Let's switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what your future looks like. So, where we've been. You lost by narrow margin.
Yeah.
I mean,
we did better than folks expected.
I thought that was really amazing, and with a shoestring budget, right?
Absolutely. I think we spent maybe $150,000 on my congressional race. By comparison, my opponent had, I think, about $3 million, and he spent a lot. I think in the primary he spent like $1 million, and then I'm not exactly sure, but I know we were outgunned, monetarily, no question.
Sure. Is there politics in your future?
I'm open to it, and so we had talked the other day. I had mentioned that I've been self-employed my entire adult life, and I'm tomorrow starting a 9-to-5 job working for somebody else, and that was largely necessitated by I lost a ton of money over the last 3 years, and so there is an element of, oh my goodness, I have to put food on the table for my family again. I've got to right the ship. And so after this last race, after the state assembly race in 2022, I again, none of this was my idea. I pray about everything. I really seek the Lord in terms of guidance for what I do. The state assembly race, he really just dropped it in my lap and said, you're doing this. But then I prayed after that race. It was like, Lord, do you want me to continue in this space? Can I not do this anymore? And God made it pretty clear, again, without telling you a 20 or 30-minute story, he made it very clear that not only are you going to run again, but you're actually going to run for the federal seat, not the state seat. And so we were obedient in that, and we saw some really extraordinary things. We saw God's hand in some really incredible ways. But all of this, the whole time, has been led by just trying to be obedient to the things that I felt the Lord was prompting me to do. And so while I'm in a position right now where it's like, my goodness, this was part of my prayer. It was like, Lord, I'll obey you. I'll do what you tell me to do, but I got to go back to work, And he's opened these doors. I'm going to focus on trying to kind of rebuild some of the financial loss. But with that, I still have a very yielded heart, which is a heart that says, God, if you continue to prompt me in this direction, if I'm supposed to continue, and unfortunately it's very frustrating to me, but I've never had God speak to me audibly. I wish he would just sit down like we are and go, okay, buddy, here's the plan. He doesn't speak to me that way, but he does speak to me very clearly through open and closed doors. And so my goal is the spring and the summer I'm going to spend kind of trying to right the ship. And then as we approach the fall, my plan is to continue to pray and just say, Lord, if this is something that is still going to be part of your plan for my life, I'm totally willing to be obedient to that. Now, one of the advantages is I've learned a lot over the last 3 years, and so even working a more conventional job and probably having to do a lot of my running after hours and on the weekends, I think that would have been more challenging. I really poured most of my time and energy into running these last 2 races. I think I've learned enough that I think even if this was like an extracurricular after work kind of an activity, I think I could do it. Better, smarter.
Yeah, I
think so.
Sure.
I told my wife, I said, the reality is I've got to figure out, if I'm going to continue to run, I have got to figure out how to earn a decent income simultaneously running for office.
Right.
Because again, for the first 2 races, really all I did was just hemorrhage money.
Right.
And praise God, like we didn't go bankrupt, and he sustained us, but I'd be a lot richer right now if I hadn't done these things. So the short answer is I'm totally open and yielded to it. It will be a completely Spirit-led thing. I have had a lot of folks say, Ian, please don't stop. Please, keep fighting,
But you want God to open that door.
Yes.
And then you're like Samuel, here I am, Lord.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, and so we're like, Samuel said, here I am, and he goes to who is it? Eli. I think it's Eli. But then there's also Isaiah, where God calls Isaiah and he says, "Here am I, Lord, send me." And so that is my heart, is just to do what God did. None of this has been about personal ambition. None of this is about, I always joke, if any of this were about what I want for me, I wouldn't be doing this. I would be, going to the river with my family and riding my horse and just living my life, But I also feel a deep conviction that I'm not here to amass wealth. I'm not here to just, sort of make the best life for myself and for my family. We are on this planet to serve other people. And so over the last few years, it's been, even if it costs me a ton of money, if God's calling me to serve in this way, I will. And so I'll continue to do that. And there is the objective reality that we ran a state assembly race. Then we ran a congressional race. Those districts largely overlap. And so we built a lot of momentum in the southeastern corner of California. And it would be foolish not to recognize that if you just stop, we spent 3 years building up name ID for Ian Weeks and building up that message. If we just stop, we sort of fritter that all away.
Right.
And so if we can continue to push, I will say that, our first race, we got about 43,000 votes. This last race, I got 107,000 votes. And so obviously there are some differences. One's a congressional race, one's assembly, one is 500,000 people, the other is 750,000. But it doesn't change the fact that 107,000+ people this past November
voted for
me.
Right.
And so if I just said, it's been too costly, it's a huge sacrifice, I'm walking away, then somebody new has to step in and you're kind of starting from scratch. And so I do feel a strong sense of responsibility that, unless God really clearly closes that door, you kind of have an obligation to keep fighting. So that's where my heart's at. And I've also come to this place where if God actually sat down and said, "Ian, I'm going to ask you to run for office 20 times and you're never going to win, but I'm telling you this is what I want you to do because of the ministry, because of the impact, because of the voice that I've given you and what I want people to learn and to hear from you," I've come to a place where the answer would be yes. It would just be, okay, like if I'm never called to win and actually have political power, but I'm just called to keep sacrificing and losing and losing and losing, I'd be all right with that too. And so I'm really open. But you've got, I think it's Matthew 6:33 where Jesus talks about not living in tomorrow. I think I've got the verses right, but he basically says, look, today has enough trouble of its own. Don't live in tomorrow. Be here in today. And so one of the greatest lessons that I've learned over the last few years is very much to get up every day and say, okay, I'm going to do what's in front of me today. I'm not going to worry too much about. So we're just going to take it one day at a time, and it may very well be that, come the fall, I'm a declared candidate again, and we'll go for round 3. But that remains to be seen. I'm not certain.
Well, I speak for many when I say I hope you do.
Well, thank you.
I hope you do. I hope that is the plan, and I understand the other, obviously.
Yeah.
So talk about, just for a couple minutes, where you're going to work, where people can reach you as a financial planner.
Thank you. Yeah, so I have been a certified financial planner since 2018. I've been a financial advisor since 2006. But again, I've always kind of run my own deal. I am going to work for a much more successful wealth management advisor out in La Quinta, and it's Solus Wealth Management. And obviously, we can work, all across the country. We live in a day and age where Zoom calls and everything. So, we've got clients all over the place. But essentially, what it is he has been so successful and has such a heavy workload that he needs help managing it. And so it was an interesting, I don't believe it's coincidence. God, crossed our paths while I was running for office. I was spending time out in the desert, and I met Greg, and he has been gracious enough to offer me basically a staff advisor position to help him.
Nice.
He basically said, hey, you have all of the qualifications to
check all the
do
boxes.
What I need.
Sure.
And so that's where I'll I'll be. And so if I guess probably the simplest way would just be look up Solus Wealth Management.
Well, how about your phone number?
Yeah, so phone number's 951-440-4358. If anyone wants to give me a call, or obviously if you look up Solus Wealth Management, you can find me there. And I would also say, even if you feel like, gosh, I'm not sure if I'm, a big enough client, maybe it's not, maybe I would just say to anybody, if you have questions about finances, give me a call, shoot me a text. I'm happy to give advice. I always joke, I talk for a living. I got a bunch of information in my brain, and so I'd be happy to help. I was just talking to a gentleman at church yesterday that was asking about what I do, and he kind of had that feeling of, oh, maybe I'm not, maybe I don't have enough money for you to talk to me. I said, Josh, just if you have questions, just give me a call. I'm happy to share the things that I know.
Nice.
And so
you're just an average guy, Ian.
I'm just a regular guy.
Just a regular guy.
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah.
Yes. So lastly, let's just touch on church a little bit.
Yeah.
So you are the worship leader?
One of them.
One of the worship leaders.
There's a director of worship at
Community Christian.
Community Christian in Hemet. And
my kids went there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
My kids went there. They went to they started school there, actually.
That's really cool. I had no idea. But yeah, so my wife and I have attended. We moved out to the Valley in 2013. We found community shortly thereafter. So we've been there for 10 or 11 years. And back in 2020, I joined the worship team there, and so I play the guitar and I sing every weekend. And so if you look up Community Christian Church, we stream online, and we've got a YouTube channel, so you can actually see me doing that. I've been involved in ministry in that capacity for, this summer will be 5 years that I've been doing that, and that was another one of those things that wasn't something I was doing. I wasn't doing music in a very structured professional manner before, and now it's a huge part of my life. And it was just one of those things that God opened the door, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll give that a shot.
You're available.
Now I lead worship all the time, and so I would say that all of these things, leading worship and doing crazy stuff like running for office, it's all, you said it, it's about being available. And I'm going to just say, for the record, I mean, it's a dangerous, scary thing to tell God, hey, I'm available, do what you want to do in my life. Right. But it's totally worth it. I mean, it has come, I joined the worship team, and Satan hit me really, really hard shortly thereafter. That was probably the worst thing that's ever happened in my life in terms of just, I believe there's a cost. There is a cost to stepping out on the battlefield and doing what God tells you to do. And the worst cost came when I joined the worship team, but even there, God walked through that with me. Then I got called to run for office. I did that, and there was a really high cost monetarily. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars I've lost. And the only reason I say that is to say, I've been punched in the face by the devil a whole bunch in the last 4 years, I believe largely because of saying yes to God, saying I'm available.
Right. Yep.
And as someone who's paid a lot for it, I can't encourage people enough, do it anyway.
Right.
Because yes, it hurts. Yes, it's a struggle. Yes, it's scary.
Your blessing's on the other side.
But man, and seeing God walk through those things with you, it's worth it. It's rough sometimes, but seeing God show up and carry you when you feel like you got nothing left it's incredible. And I'll point people to the book of Job. Job goes through this tremendous suffering, and there's this verse at the end where he says, my ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. And the idea being that he's gone through this incredible suffering, and it's like, man, I thought I knew you before, but holy smokes, man, like, and I've used the analogy of like if you were blind and someone brought you to Niagara Falls, you would understand that you're in the presence of something extraordinary, but imagine if they could just wave a wand and give you your sight, and all of a sudden you go, holy smokes, that's the thing I was hearing. I've gotten to experience God in a way that, you're hard pressed to want to pay the price of admission.
There's no testimony without a test,
That's
right?
it.
Yeah.
That's it. And so I would just encourage anybody who's watching or listening, from somebody who's paid a pretty high price to have the experience, it's worth the price. Say yes to God. Step out in faith and say, look, I don't know what you know, he's got a different plan for each one of our lives. Hey, Lord, I don't know what you got for me, but whatever it is, I'll do it. And you might wake up one day and find yourself in some really crazy places, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
And I can't encourage people enough to step out in faith and be bold. That's the kind of stuff that changes the world.
Love it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here, everyone. Ian Weeks.
Thank you.
Great to see you, my friend.
Great to see you.